Have you given thought about improving employment for people with disabilities?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I've given a lot of thought to this question. I actually passed a law creating an employment first policy for the state of Illinois, which is primarily for individuals with intellectual disabilities who typically have been served either in institutional settings, which are, well, in many cases are just simply not humane, frankly, or if not that, then served in community settings, either without the expectation or hope of employment, or maybe employment in sheltered workshops as opposed to fully integrated employment. And so we passed a law that I was the sponsor of, creating an employment first policy, but that doesn't really do it. It just kind of puts in place the goal and then the kind of entity inside of state government to move us in that direction. And to be honest, there's still a lot of progress left to be done, and still a lot of progress left to be made, particularly in the direction of real integration, right? Real integration, real pay equity, real equality on all fronts. When it comes to individuals with physical disabilities, I think even less has been done, frankly. And every time we fight a battle on this front, what happens is it's like a moment of education that just completely takes the legislative process by surprise. And what that tells me is that there isn't really a culture in Springfield that says like, okay, we understand this community, we work with this community, we include this community, and then we build our institutions around the needs of everyone, including members of this community. And that's like, ultimately that's an activism fight. And so this is a community that has remarkable activist groups as part of its movement. But I think we have to make that louder. I think we have to make that a lot clearer. I think we have to bring that to Springfield better. And I think we have to also bring it into the political process better, right? So like, if anyone here who's run for office will have experienced this with me, and hopefully will agree, or, well, we'll see. You're all your own people. But in my experience, when you knock on doors and you're running for office, on every block or every 2 blocks, there's one family where there's a person with a disability living there, and the question of how society needs to provide full equality and integration and adequate services, as well as equal employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities, is top of mind in every voter in that household. And then for the rest of the block, no one's paying attention. And I think if you look at civil rights movements that have been successful, they're movements that persuade every person, whether they are a member of the affected population or not, that that group's fight is all of our fight. And I think that we as society, if you look at how we've embraced, for example, the movement for LGBT equality or the movement for immigrant rights, there's a lot of people who are not themselves LGBT or not themselves immigrants or not themselves refugees who see the fight for LGBT equality and the fight for immigrant rights and the fight for refugee rights as their fights. There aren't enough people who are not people with disabilities who see the fights for rights for people with disabilities as their own fights. And I don't know how I can help make that transition, but I'd like to be a part of making that transition, because that's going to be how we're ultimately going to win the kinds of transformations that will generate real inclusion and equality.